Welcome to the Parenting Puzzle Podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen, the podcast where we attempt to solve the parenting puzzle together.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another fantastic edition of the Parenting Puzzle Podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen. Dr. D, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Jake. How are you feeling?
Everybody's finally on the mend. So we are doing awesome. I am really excited about today's podcast. I've got a good friend of mine coming on. His name's Tony. And I think what I'm excited about most about this episode is I've dealt with this problem personally. It's actually part of the reason why I got in touch with you, Dr. D, was because I think my son, my 9-year-old, similar to what Tony's dealing with his 9-year-old, coincidentally, is there's a lot of similarities there. Yeah, Tony, I appreciate you jumping onto the podcast, man. I know it takes a little bit of bravery to jump on and do something like this. It's different. I think it's still a little bit nerve-wracking for me and Dr. D, even though this is like our 15th episode. Woohoo. So, yeah, without any further ado, man, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself and give us a little bit of history on your family, and we'll jump right into it.
Absolutely. Jake, thank you so much for having me on here. Dr.
Yeah, thank
D,
you.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you. Like Jake was saying, my name's Tony Anselmi. I'm 40 years old. I got 3 kids, all boys. I got a 19-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So quite a bit of age gaps in between the kids and all and stuff like that. So, I've been a dad since I was 20 years old. So pretty much half my life I've been a dad at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You didn't waste any time, man. You started young.
yeah, in college, man. In college.
It happens.
Right.
It happens. So
Yep.
look, the whole genesis behind this podcast is to help parents in the situation that they find themselves in, right? Like every family, everybody's journey is a little bit different. But the one thing that kind of remains the same is that parenting is hard, full stop. Like there's no manual. There's no, hey, go look at this parenting encyclopedia. You're having this problem. Oh, here's the perfect answer for you. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have issues, right? And that's why we wanted to make this podcast happen, is because we want to get really good tips out there that people can use and implement pretty quickly and hopefully start to see a little bit of change in a positive direction, right? So I know you got a question, Tony. So why don't you go ahead and ask your question, and Dr. D is the best, and she's going to hopefully give you some great tips.
All right. Hey, Dr. D. To give you a little background before I ask my question, my 9-year-old son, he has been dealing with anger issues for probably as long as I can remember. I'm also someone who, growing up, I struggled with anger issues. It seems to be like a generational thing. My dad struggled with it, my grandfather, pretty much as far back as I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
So my 9-year-old, he actually does see a behaviorist. He's been seeing a behaviorist since he's been 3 years old, I believe. And actually it stemmed from some issues he had at daycare, from like biting and hitting and stuff like that, basically like impulse control, I guess. So my 9-year-old, he was diagnosed with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
The anger kind of like goes in like waves, I find. Like you have some good weeks and bad weeks. Jake, you can probably attest to that too, that some days are better than others with it. But it seems with his anger, it gets triggered by like very little things, like a toy of his breaking or us having to take something away from him because he didn't do good in school and stuff. And it would just snowball from there and stuff like that. So the question I had, it's actually kind of a 2-part question. With children with ADHD, do you kind of see a correlation between kids that do have ADHD and also anger issues? It's kind of the first part of the question. The second part is, when they do get in these fits of anger and rage and stuff, is there ways you can maybe help diffuse it and basically calm them down?
Okay, this is an awesome question, Tony. Thank you for bringing this up. So the answer to the first part is yes. emotion dysregulation, which is kind of like getting out of control, to use kind of common language, is a typical part of ADHD. Okay, and you pointed to it when you said there's that impulsivity factor that plays a role. Okay, so this is a really, really common thing that kids and even adults with ADHD experience. So first part is a simple answer, yes. Okay, so you are not alone. Your child is not alone. Very, very typically a part of the ADHD profile. Second part, unfortunately, as always, a little bit more complicated. What can you do about it? So there are a few recommendations that I can give you. The first is, as the parent, you really want to stay as calm as you can. I know this is much easier said than done.
Yeah.
I get it. But I'm telling you this for a good reason, and here's the reason. A big piece of parenting is modeling, and the calmer you stay, you are making the vibe of the environment more neutral. That is literally going to help your child regulate faster. So you staying calm is helping your child get calmer faster. So it actually is really important. Okay. Part of the thing that I like to tell parents to remember in these moments, because kids start yelling or screaming or throwing stuff, like it's really hard to stay calm. If you can remember, he is not doing this on purpose. He is feeling out of control in his body, and that's what I'm seeing on the outside. Like the outside is a reflection of what's going on inside. My whole goal here is to help him calm down so he feels better inside. It's actually easier for us to stay calm when we don't think our kid is doing it on purpose, or we don't have a blame thought in our mind. Okay, so keep that in mind. He is not doing this on purpose. His body, inside his body and brain, are feeling out of control. I would encourage you to say that to yourself when you see this happening. You will have a better time staying calm in that moment when you are telling yourself that. Okay, making sense so far?
Yes. Yep.
So I don't want to interfere with whatever you're doing with your behaviors, but the one thing that we can do to help de-escalate our bodies when our bodies are going whoop is to slow our breathing. Our breathing system is the one system that we physically can go from like auto to manual, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if he'll be with you, what you really want to help him do is activate his body's soothing system, right? Because his anger system alarm is going off and he's feeling out of control, and you want to help his body start to soothe. Because when he soothes, he's going to calm down. That's what's going to happen emotionally for him.
Right.
And that's what you're going to see behaviorally, externally. So if you have a kid who responds well to touch and will allow you to touch them when they're activated, a hand on the shoulder, a rub on the back can be helpful. You gotta practice this stuff when he is not activated. So I really want to encourage you to have a conversation with him when he's not activated. Hey, when you're feeling really upset, is it okay if I just put my hand on your shoulder to let you know I'm here? And you might have to try it. If he says, I don't know, can we try it next time? If you get mad, that's okay. If he shrugs you up, don't touch me, no problem, lesson learned, right? But some kids respond really well to touch. It's like, hey, I'm good, I'm here. And that can actually be really reassuring for kids. So talk about it when he's calm, try it when he's activated, see what happens, adjust accordingly, right? Parenting needs to be so flexible. To Jake's point, there's no encyclopedia. So try that. The other thing you want to talk about when he is calm is got to slow the breathing down. So I'm going to practice slow deep breath. You might just have to show him. So he's getting upset. I understand. Let me pause for a second and say, if he's doing anything unsafe for himself, for others in the family, or for the space, I know you got to get him safe. You got to get his body safe. But let's say he's just yelling and screaming, maybe even mean things, right? He's just out of control and just being mean. You're going to just start taking deep breaths, and you're going to tell him this ahead of time. So it's not like, what the heck is happening over there, right? You're going to say, I'm going to slow my breathing. I want to help you slow your breathing. Some kids will let you call it. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When he is so distressed, the key thing to do is just to try to get him out of that state of distress. For some kids, they're not ready to go to breathing, just any kind of shift can be helpful. So if he's open to it, open the freezer door. Well, I guess I don't know if you have a drawer or door or whatever, refrigerator, whatever. Get the cold air on yourself. Turn on the sink if you have a tap that gets cold real fast, or run the water for a sec. Put it on your wrists or behind the neck. Those are places that cool our body down fast. You want to help. He's hot, right? He's acting hot, but he's hot. His body feels hot inside. So you want to have him cool himself down. The breathing is helping him cool himself down. So a good way to be thinking about it is he's hot or he's red. We want to get him down to cool. We want to get him down to blue, right? So cool air, cool water, slow breathing, a hand to kind of ground him. All of those things are going to help him. He's not one size fits all, so you got to play around and see what works for him.
Yeah.
But all of those things are going to help that anger system cool down. And once he's cooler, and not until he's really cool, do you want to start having any kind of consequences or discussion about what happened? If he's activated, one of our biggest parenting mistakes, I do this for a living and I make this mistake. So I just want to call it out. Like, this is hard. But one of our biggest parenting mistakes is trying to correct when we're in the middle of flared emotions. It doesn't work. It doesn't work well. So step one is to help him cool down before you're going to even start to correct or have a consequence for the behavior. I'm not saying you can't have a consequence. Big fan of consequences. They set limits and boundaries in the world for kids. They're good for kids. But when kids are in a highly emotionally activated state, they don't care about the stuff you're taking away. Their brain can't even process it because the part of their brain that's working is not the part of their brain that's going, do I want to give up video games for a week? Let me think about this for a minute. Like, they can't even think that much, right? And so we're throwing out stuff to try to calm them down, and they're not responding, right? So we want to help them calm themselves down. Helps us. Taking those deep breaths are going to help you stay cool. So if you can take those slow deep breaths, keep yourself cool, keep yourself from going up with him. That is one of the biggest parenting strengths that you can have. When he starts to ratchet up the emotion, if you can keep it calm and neutral, that is like 90% of the battle won. And then once he's gotten himself calmer, being able to figure out what happens and go from there, I think you'll find yourself in a better spot.
Dr. D, I really like that thought process. That's somewhat new to me, but about like not placing blame on the kid. Like, that's them being that upset and that emotional is not where they want to be either. Like, they don't want to be like this. They're not doing it on purpose. Like, it's not comfortable or optimal for them either, right? So that's an interesting like thought exercise, like not to place blame on anybody in the situation. Right. And I had a question about consequences within, so do you think that trying to throw a consequence or something like, hey, I'm gonna take away a toy or something for a day, do you think that actually like just puts more gas on the fire? Like, if they do recognize like there's a consequence out there, that'd probably just like make it worse in the moment?
That's a great question. I would say I'm not sure if it puts more gas on the fire or if it's just kind of like bouncing off rubber. Like, it doesn't even matter because they're so activated. And I think the reason why I say I'm not sure is because I think for some kids, they're already angry and then you put a consequence. Now they're more angry or enraged. And for some kids, they like almost didn't hear it because it's just, they're just in a different state. And so I've never seen a kid in a highly activated state go, oh, I'm losing my fire truck. Oh, well then. I'm good. Like, I've never seen it. Now, a kid who is not in a highly enraged state, but that's just kind of like messing around, giving an elbow to a sibling or something, say, hey, hands to yourself, sorry, take away the fire truck. That's a different story. Okay. But I'm talking about what Tony's coming to me with, which is a kid who is emotionally dysregulated and feeling out of control inside themselves. Step one has to be about regaining control. None of the other things are going to work until that his internal system is in a better spot to receive that communication from you and have that conversation or hear that limit.
Dr. D, I'm just curious. So like we talked about these practical things that you could do, right? You can control your breathing as the parent. That's great advice. You can put a cold towel on them, like I guess it reminds me of your book. Shout out, everybody feels angry sometimes. Like their volcano level is like boom, like they're exploding, right? So like I've seen personally with my 9-year-old that like when they're at that place where they're like it's not hot anymore, they're like full, like in the book the kids like has his flames coming out of his head, right?
Yeah.
They're at that point.
Yeah.
Like what if they're at that point and there's like nothing in that moment that you can, like breathing, they're not gonna listen to breathing, a cold, they're not gonna let you touch them, like they're just unconsolable.
Yeah.
Like
Good
what
question.
do you do at that point?
Good question. So in that moment, you just want to focus on safety. They will come down. Here's the great news about emotions. They're temporary states. Okay. So they come, emotions change. We have many of them over the course of the day. Whatever was setting him off, he will come down from that, right? So you just want to make sure that if he's so inconsolable that he's actually safe. And some kids, this is why I want you to practice when he's calm. Some kids have really good insight about what they need. Some kids are like, I have no idea. But some kids will say, I just need you to give me space. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to give you some space. I'm taking a few steps away, or let me give you some space. Why don't you spend some time in your room? I'll come check in on you in a couple minutes, right? Again, just want to focus on safety. Make sure if they're not hurting themselves, anyone else, or like destroying property, ripping up some papers, whatever. It happens, okay? There are consequences to rage. If they are breaking things that they could then hurt, like smashing a lamp and then they cut themselves, that's the thing we want to protect against, right? So you got to stay by them if they're unsafe, but if they're safe, but just raging and they want space, by all means, give kids space. Sometimes well-intentioned parents think like, I got to be in there, face with them, or I got to be in the space with them to make sure, whatever I could help them. And it's like, sometimes kids, the biggest help you could give them is just giving them some space. So that's another thing you can check in with your son, Tony, about if he wants some space. Awesome. I'll come check back in with you. That's the signal of I care about you. I love you. And so I'm going to come check on you, make sure you're okay.
Right.
And as parents, we don't want to be in that environment. It's like staying calm is pretty hard when your kid's like throwing himself on the ground and like all this other things. So being away and giving yourself a moment in that time, it's probably not a bad idea either for both parties. So that's what I think. Tony, I just want to check in. Anything else? Do you think that kind of answered your question, or?
Very much so. And Jake, to mirror a little bit what you said, that the not placing blame part, that's a concept I haven't really like thought about before, about him not wanting to be in that emotional state and stuff. It kind of puts a kind of different perspective on it. You're not focusing on what they're doing, but like kind of like saying, okay, you're upset, but you don't want to be upset right now. You're not choosing to be upset right now. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, Tony. And if it helps, for some parents, it helps. For some parents, it helps to realize that when their kids are physically hurt, like you can see, right? You can see the scratch. You can see so if they come to you crying and you're not like, oh man, enough of this, right? You're like, oh no, I'm sorry. Let's get your bandage and stuff. But when they're emotionally hurt, we can't see it. So you're right. It's harder for us to go straight to that place of compassion. If you can start to practice this for yourself, your son's going to also feel that. And that will also likely help him come down faster, because that's probably going to feel different to him, that you're not just getting into it when he's upset. You are focusing on, he's upset. Let's get to a calmer place and then let's work it out. Right. So I'm so glad that resonated with you.
Very much.
Dr. D, are you ready for my favorite segment?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do a quick shout out to our amazing sponsor. So just want to thank our sponsor, Louisiana Flag Football, for supporting this podcast and sponsoring The Last Word with Dr. D. Louisiana Flag Football is the premier flag football league in Louisiana. I think as parents, I'm sure Tony would agree with this, we're always looking for things for our kids to be active, to get more active, to get off the couch. So if you're looking for a way for your son or daughter to be more active, to have an opportunity to be in a competitive yet safe environment, I would highly recommend Louisiana flag football. It's a great opportunity for kids to make friends, learn discipline, be part of a team. So if you're interested in learning more about this great flag football league, Louisiana Flag Football, check out their website. And we just want to thank them so much for supporting our podcast. And we think it's a great place to drive some activity for your kiddos. And Dr. D, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so I love Tony's question about how do you help kids who are in an emotionally dysregulated state of anger, upset, distress, whatever you want to call it. First thing to do is realize that as a parent, kids do not want to be in this state. It does not feel good for them. So recognizing when your kid is really angry and raging, they're not doing this on purpose. And when we tell ourselves that, it kind of changes how we feel emotionally about what's going on as well. And it puts us in a much better position to parent. So once we kind of think about, they're not doing this on purpose, they're feeling really out of control, then we can go on to the second step, which is to help them get more in control. I highly recommend that parents talk about this with their kids when their kids are calm. I get that some kids don't want to talk about it when they're calm, but find a good moment, find a good situation when you're out just kind of like throwing a baseball around or going for a walk or in the car when you're not kind of facing each other, but you can kind of say, hey, that was really tough last night. Yeah, listen, I want to be able to support you better in that situation. And then it's going to be a little bit of trial and error of what works well for your child, but the goal is to bring the emotion down. So physically, we can calm our breathing down, which helps to calm our emotional regulation. We can change the temperature by getting some cold air, either from the freezer or some cold water on wrists or the back of your neck will help cool things down. Some kids respond really well to touch, so a little back rub or a little hand on the shoulder can also help them feel a little bit less out of control. The one thing I want to really reiterate is throwing consequences at them when they're in this dysregulated state is likely to backfire. Most kids can't really even process it in that state. So at the best, it won't have any effect. At the worst, to your point, Jake, it'll make kids more angry. So you want to save that for when everyone's calm. I'm not saying you shouldn't do consequences. Absolutely. If they're raging and there were things that happened or things that were said, absolutely set a consequence, but wait till they're calm and in a place to hear it and receive it. And in the meantime, just work on helping them regulate and helping yourself stay calm. You will end up with a much better, shorter burst of anger and dysregulation if you try this.
Dr. D, I know this was super helpful for me. I have a great feeling that it's going to help a lot of people in our audience. And Tony, I'm hopeful it helped you as well, sir.
It definitely did. Thank y'all so much for having me on here. This has been really, really informative. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For jumping on. And before we break off, I have to say this because I just can't help myself. If you have gotten something awesome out of this episode, a great tip from Dr. D, please go check out our other episodes. We've got several others. The Parenting Podcast with Dr. D. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube on Speedster Squad, YouTube at Dr. D's channel. We love doing this because we realize how hard parenting is. And we just want to get these really good tips out there. We want to get them to more people. And the best way for us to do that is for you to like the podcast, follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, share it to everybody and your mama and them so we could keep doing this. And I could keep convincing Dr. D to do it. So, Tony, thank you so much for jumping on, man.
Tony.
We're going to send you that book. Please don't forget to text us your address. So thank you so much for going on.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Dr. D.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. It really helps us out and lets others discover the show.